What's going on?
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gonna feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for blood and my tongue keeps bleeding. From the words I spit, so sharp, so freezing. So cold, behold, frostbite they feeling. I could tear you apart or I could go heal them. Don't believe in fate, don't believe in ceilings. I just need a taste and my mind starts feeling. I don't pace myself, I grind on kneeling. Got lust for change, I just love the feeling. I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. Cause I'ma live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I go by at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll soon be winning. I live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I go by at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll soon be winning. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gonna feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gonna feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Dead Air Live.
What the actual hell?
Why aren't you dressed up? This is Ben Hansen live on our show tonight.
I didn't get the memo. Geez, they would throw on a tie or something. I mean,
we've been trying for 13 years to get this man on our show.
Oh, I thought you were going to play a piano or something tonight.
No, this is important. VIP status at this point. You know, we've reached Hollywood again, but it's Ben Hansen, and
right.
But we thank you guys for joining us tonight. Dead Air Live on the Dead Air Full Spectrum channel. We are simulcast with KGRADB.com, KGRA on Facebook. You can also find us on Twitter. Ken's not doing the clips there, so I'll have to do that.
No, I'm not doing the clips. Sorry about that. I'm mesmerized by your sartorial splendor tonight.
/ Global Radio Live. Also here on YouTube at Dead Air Nation. You can also find us again on Twitter at Dead Air _ Put it up there after it is.
Yeah. Dead Air _
Global Radio Live. What do we got here? YouTube Nation.
Yeah.
Dead Air Full Spectrum. We did that one. Twitter.com. You know what to this? Even with the tuxedo, you can't be professional.
I know. I can't. It's just I'm blown away.
And Patreon, which we got exciting news to bring up for you. Actually, we've got exciting news to bring up for you guys tonight, both on Patreon and here on Dead Air Full Spectrum, which we're looking forward to bringing up here in just a few moments. Patreon, guys, you want to definitely check it out. $3 a month. Just spoke with Sharon Coyle of Rolling Hills Asylum yesterday, the day before, and she and two of her team members want to join Patreon. So, it's building up. It's having a lot more fun, and we're looking forward to having her join us on a town hall. But don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also important for you guys to hit the thumbs up for the content that we're presenting to you. Please also hit that reminder bell so that you're always notified when there is content coming up on our channel. We actually have to confess something. We have Ben Hansen joining us tonight, but it will be a pre-record. We did this with Ben on Wednesday very early morning for him, before he was heading out with his family for a holiday. And, it's the only time we could squeeze him in. And it wasn't the first time we tried to negotiate this. A couple of times it was like, well, I can do it while I'm driving the car. And I said, no, I don't want to be part of an accident.
No,
Ben
too much
Hansen
paperwork.
killed during interview while driving. So we put it off and scheduled it and rescheduled it. And we finally made it happen. And you guys will be able to see it in its entirety here in a little while. But we've got things that we need to address first and foremost, Ken. And I think the most important part I will leave up to you. Uh-oh.
Yep. Conjuring House alert. It must be. Get to the
God,
cellars.
that's loud. That is so loud. Okay, now that we're all awake, what's going on?
Get to the cellars. Well, a couple of weeks ago, we addressed all the goings on at the farm on Ron Top Road. And there have been further developments that have stoked the fire. But what I'm hoping to do tonight is address these and maybe be done with it on this show. So full disclosure, I think a lot of people who know me know that I am very friendly with every member of the former staff. In a couple of cases, they're members of Rise Up Paranormal. So full disclosure there too. There's a lot of things that I'm not at liberty to talk about because it's not my place, frankly. But a lot of people, when you don't have information, understandably, people speculate, they give opinions, they give assumptions, they project things. We understand that. But I just wanted to address a couple of things tonight. First, there's the separation of the paranormal aspects from the business aspects of this situation. And don't want a close-up, George. You hang right in there with me. You're making me look good in that tuxedo. But first of all, I'm hoping that anybody who is owed money for services rendered and time working is made whole and justly compensated, because that's the legal and moral thing to do. So I hope all of that's resolved. Now, as far as the paranormal, there's the usual amount of virtual signaling going on within the community, how this hurts the paranormal field. And in my mind, it really doesn't. It doesn't hurt the paranormal field. It doesn't preclude you from going out, researching, investigating, and seeking the truth at a particular place, whether it's by invitation or a place that you pay to get in. All it does is really remove or question this particular property from a potential destination spot. But that's a developing story, and we'll see what happens there. At the end of the day, it's about someone who is experiencing some severe issues. And as a human being, you hate to see anyone go through that, because each one of us, each one of you has value as a person. And at the end of the day, that's what's the important thing here. Now, I understand that some of those issues include, lashing out at people and some, I guess you could call them delusionary behaviors, which are part of the symptoms. But we have to remember that it's important that the proper assistance be sought in this above everything else. So for a lot of people that are commenting and suggesting certain paths be taken, whether it's wellness checks or things like that, it's important to know that those things have already been suggested and in many cases acted upon, sometimes on multiple occasions. And sadly, the people that have borne the brunt of the most inflammatory rhetoric from the owner and are the ones that have done the most to help and address it in a number of ways. But like anyone, there's a limit when you're accused of stealing or your employment history has been misrepresented. So like we all have, enough's enough sometimes. There's only so much we can do. and contribute to the situation. But a lot of those people that are under fire or have come under fire are the ones that have done the most to try to work through this. And that is the really sad part and frustrating part for all of them. So again, I'm not at liberty to get too deep into that, but it has been exhausting for them in some cases. So I would say to everyone, now is not the time for cruelty. So I join with a lot of people who hope that the proper treatment is sought, but there's only one person who can do that. And if you've dealt with anyone, whether it's mental incapacitation, addiction, you know, at the end of the day, it's leading a horse to water, but that person has to take the necessary steps. And I pray that they do. So the second thing is, in terms of this being part of the property, the house or the spirits within, I personally don't subscribe to those theories. So, I mean, certainly the property can be a trigger for some things, but it's more the overall situation there than it is the spirits interacting. I think that if you come into that place with a certain mentality, that mentality is enhanced by that place. But George, that can be said of so many other places too. You know, if you come in with a negative attitude or a positive attitude, whatever it is, those things are going to be enhanced. I don't think Conjuring House is any different. So maybe there's a pre-existing affliction here that's enhanced by pressures and stress, but I'm not going to play amateur psychologist on this because a lot of people are doing that. And I haven't said anything because my attitude is like, oh yeah, the world needs one more opinion from somebody, you know, and you have a right to yours, you know. So, but at the end of the day, if personal accountability is not taken and all of the blame is going to be placed at the feet of the spirit world, there's very little incentive or motivation to address it. And that's important. And the situation will get worse before it gets better. Responsibility has to be taken. So the vast majority of people who have worked there have literally spent more time there than the owner, who occasionally would, you know, pop in on weekends because she has other businesses and other responsibilities. And occasionally, Jacqueline would spend, you know, an extended period of time there, depending on her schedule. But the staff there, the ones that you've heard from on a couple, you know, Jason Hawes' podcast, etc., literally they spent more hours there. And to my knowledge, none of them have, I mean, I'm sure they've had their moments there, but none of them have come away with dramatic personality changes or a negative outlook on anything. And they've spent a lot of time in that house over a couple of years. So as someone who's spent a great deal of time there myself, I've done a couple of events. I spent a lot of time working in the barn before that tragically burned. And most of the time I would spend in the staff quarters just as a social visit. I never felt compelled to even go inside the house. I'd sit there, catch up with friends, keep them company, chew the fat, tell jokes, and then I would go home. So I understand a boycott is being asked for, and there's a lot of hesitancy to put yourself in a potentially bad situation there. And I don't blame anyone for that. It's probably in your best interest to look before you leap. But I just hope that the issues that exist at some point will be addressed and a human being can be saved. And in the meantime, here we are in the situation we're at. So as far as my thoughts on this, as someone, I don't want to paint myself as close to this. I'm close to the people, but I have nothing to do with the day-to-day operations and everything that everyone's experienced. I am a spectator in this, like a lot of people are, other than what people confide in me just to get things off their chest. And that's going to stay, because that's the way I am. You tell me something in confidence, it stays there. There's great value for me in doing that. But I hope Jacqueline Nunez comes to realize that help is needed. And more importantly than anything, I know a lot of people are being mean about the situation and everything like that. So it's okay. What are you going to do? I mean, the internet will do that to you. But I hope she seeks the help that she needs, because somewhere underneath is the person we met, I guess, George, I'm not sure how long, let's say 2 years. 2 years ago in our first introduction, who wanted to learn and was willing to, take suggestions and thought of different ways to make this whole thing work. But she paid an awful lot of money. Mortgage has to be paid. As far as pricing, I don't know. That's above my pay grade. I don't set prices, and I don't have an opinion on it one way or the other. So that is an entirely different thing. When people say it's all about the money, to some degree it is, because there's, like, according to reports, 1.5 million reasons why it has to be about the money. But it's the return that you're getting on whatever you invest financially in going there. And right now, it's a difficult situation. As far as I know, the gates are still open and tours are being given, etc. and so forth. But I hope for the best in this situation. And for that, if you have something you want to weigh in on, I would love to hear it. But this is pretty much, I think, my statement on this, and pretty much where I'm going to land on this. So we just need to cool the engine maybe a little bit. I know it's hard because posts come out, but it just doesn't sound to me like they're well thought out. And, we're all aware of what's been posted, and some of it is a little out there. But I look at it the same way. If someone makes an outrageous claim about a situation they would like us to go and investigate, now I have to separate whether this person is going through something on the mental side or if it's a cry for help. But there's one person that can decide this, and I hope she does. For her sake, the hell with the house and the Conjuring house and all of that, for her own sake, as just a human being, Jacqueline, I know you're probably not listening to this, but I join with a lot of people who are just saying, we all do care. It's unfortunate what's going on there right now. I know a lot of people are hot about it, but you don't give up on you don't give up on a human being, like that. I hope not.
Yeah, we will get to the Ben Hansen interview here in a second, but we also have announcements that'll be coming up that we will either after the interview or just before our second hour guest, which is the incredible Paige, part of the UFO community. She's a lecturer, author. She's been on numerous shows, and we're so lucky to have her for the second hour. Sure. Well said, Ken. But let's get to it, guys. I know you've been waiting for this, our interview with Ben Hansen. So let's get to it right now and click on this. Here we go.
Your research into this now, is there, or maybe you can't point to one, but of all the different cases and the different incidents that you've been able to visit and revisit now that you're into this, do you have a Mount Rushmore of cases that you've been involved in that are really compelling to you, that make you want to go back and do a little bit more digging, because we know the way we're a little desensitized to things, and you probably get all sorts of videos, and we know how videos can be manipulated.
Ladies and gentlemen, look what we have here this weekend. Ben Hansen live from the West Coast, joining us this evening. And Ben, welcome back. It's been a long time since you've been on Dead Air.
Yeah, it has. It has. It's been many, many years. I wasn't even sure that I'd still be doing this, but here we are.
Ben seems to not have changed, though, physically. He's still young as we get older, you know?
Yeah, I think he drinks from the same well as Josh Gates. Yeah. The vampire.
I don't know about that. I feel older. Every day you wake up and you're like, what part of me doesn't hurt today?
Yeah. It's like it's easier, it's a shorter period of time to list those things, Ben, than it is to cover them.
My God, I mean, you first came into our purview with the fact or fake files and everything that you did involved with that. And like you said, you didn't even know that you were going to still be part of this many years later. What's kept you in it up to this point in time?
Well, I guess what's kind of odd to me, I mean, I've always been obviously interested in the subject and investigating on my free time, doing everything like that. But I always tell people, like, if you want to do this semi full time, you really have to be either writing books continuously, starting a tour group, or, you know, doing TV stuff. And even the TV isn't full time. So I thought after Fact or Faked, you know, people kind of get sick of seeing me. And so I was like, that was fun. Did, you know, 3 seasons of that. And I was not an ambition of mine to be on TV. So I just kind of put that aside and went back to, you know, working on my own businesses. And then the next thing that came up, if you remember, like, sci-fi got out of the whole paranormal you know, genre, like, altogether. And it was then Destination America that kind of hobbled along with Travel Channel doing, you know, ghost adventures. And soon at some point, you know, I did a couple appearances on things with like Nick Groff and, you know, his Paranormal Lockdown and things. But then Travel Channel, we knew there was going to be a break of several years where there was like really not a whole lot of paranormal.
Yeah.
There's only a couple shows that went on, right?
Yeah.
But then it came back fast. It came back really fast because Destination America merged with Discovery Channel and then with Travel Channel. And then they just took up the genre and off it went again. And we did Ghosts of Morgan City for one season, which was really fun, really amazing. And then we started having these big developments with news with UFOs, and that started to become a hot topic again. And that's how I got into doing season 1 and 2 of UFO Witness. And all of these, it's funny because like when you get into TV, like you have your own ideas of what you want to create, and you can spend so long doing that and getting bites, maybe doing some development, and that goes on for years and they don't bite anything. And then they come to you with a concept that is virtually the same as what you've been pitching them for years. And they're like, do you want to do our show?
Now, right?
We've all experienced that. I know. Well, what I'm going to do, Ben, is I told Ken earlier, I said, listen, we've got him for a limited amount of time. We want to get into some really hardcore nerd UFO stuff, and that's Ken's department. That's what he falls down. So I'm going to let him take over for a little bit here, and then I'll jump back in the last 10 minutes or so.
Okay, sounds good.
Ken.
Sure. Okay, thanks, George. And once again, welcome, Ben. It's great to see you. So there's been a lot of developments. You alluded to it before, and although it's been a hot minute since this happened, I'm really curious to get your take on it. Specifically, the congressional hearings on UAPs, as we're calling them now, to get rid of the stigma. And we all saw the testimony of David Gresh and Ryan Graves, Commander David Fravor. The pilot and firsthand accounts were compelling. Beg your pardon. And there were the usual suspects, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way, seated behind them, and Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, Leslie Keane, and so forth. So getting right to the question, in watching those hearings, for you who's immersed in this and researches it, did you feel it moved the needle in any way, or was this just amounted to the same old, same old?
Yeah, I think absolutely it did. We have to remember, those of us who do this all the time, like, um, if you think of it like sports, like we're further down the field already waiting for the pass, right? But the people in the general public are kind of way back here, just getting introduced to the subject, and so we want the ball to move way downfield because like we're ready, and everyone else is like, wait, what? Tell me about those videos. I remember something about those videos. Oh, there were pilots that saw things. Wait, there's a government program that did what? Right. And so like I think if nothing else, putting that on the stage and having so many congressional and Senate members behind this and actually making it a priority, and a lot of them actually demanding and trying to put it into the National Defense Authorization Act, the whistleblower protections, all of that is showing that not only there's an interest, but there's a compelling, kind of like a pathway forward. And what people have to realize is it takes a long time, and there's a lot of patience involved, and we can get into later whether I think it should all come at once or not. But
Sure.
I think that what we're hearing now, that possibly have obviously a tumultuous campaign season going on. I think it would get lost in it if they tried to do hearings this fall, but that was the plan. The plan is that they're getting witnesses and preparing for new hearings. So whether that happens in the fall or after the election, we don't know.
Yeah, I think right now that being an election year, there's a obvious preoccupation with that right now. But I know for me, if I never hear the word skiff again, it'll be too soon. So where are the guardrails, Ben, with national security on this? Because there's a lot of players involved. There, of course, is, the military complex. There's, private corporations, Bob Bigelow and all the rest of that. Where are the guardrails on what we can learn, what we're allowed to learn? Because I don't take issue with the idea that every government needs to keep their secrets for good reason. But where's the delineation in your mind between what can we actually be told from this? And let's go there right now. Are we prepared to hear it? Because when you're talking about something bringing people together, I think back to the pandemic. And that didn't do a hell of a lot to bring people together with a global crisis. So where does that fit in your mind?
Absolutely. Well, I'll start with the first question. It's kind of on a similar subject, but the first thing is like, what should we, or what are we maybe going to be allowed to know? I think we're in new territory here for now. Okay, let's suppose there's a secret keeping group, and this has been going on for decades. Whoever they are, right? It's not new territory to them. They have kept it secret thus far, and I think a lot of reason for that is because it is very fractured. You'd mentioned, private industry. I think a lot of these, secrets have been squirreled away in so many different parts that not any real one person, maybe there is a group, I don't know, but there's very, very few people who know where all this stuff fits together. And so, for example, when you hear spokesperson for the DoD and they're answering, hey, we have no information on that, or we're not aware of this or that, it's possible they're actually telling the truth. We say, oh, you're covering up, you're lying. Well, the front office people, even the high ranking officers who are just assigned to, these study groups, Arrow and UAP task force, whatever, I honestly don't think that they may have the access. And so when they look and they try to find out, they get inklings of it, but they could honestly be telling the truth because it's that deep. So that's the first thing. As far as navigating through that, though, that is sort of this conundrum they're faced with, because you have videos that come out, like the Tic Tac video, the one over, we believe, was Iraq, the sphere, all those things. They have sworn to, provide transparency, yet they seem to always fall back on, well, we can't release it because it shows sources, methods, capabilities, or technology.
Right.
Right. And so it's this big debate. You can see the congressional members saying, look, you have a thermal image. How is that top secret? Right. Like it's not a big secret that we have these cameras. So scrub what you need to with the data on how the camera obtained it. Just show us the image. Right. And that's kind of where I do think, especially, we're going to be seeing some videos coming out maybe in the next year, some other things that'll be like Tic Tac or even far better. But is that going to convince people completely? I don't think so. I think it's just going to keep the conversation really going, solidifying that this is a real phenomenon. All right. So the second part of your question, can we handle this and the pandemic and everything? That's exactly what I did my research on at Georgetown. And we're just about ready to publish a paper, a compendium of different, mine would be one chapter in it, but of this idea of global compromising, reality compromising events. And, I could speak for hours on this, but the bottom line is the bulk of research suggests in disasters and crisis, most people do not panic. But I think this is entirely different. We learned from COVID some things about psychological crisis, things that are like, even the physical threat is not there yet, but it's the panic of, buying the toilet paper and everything because it's the unknown unknown. And this represents, in my view, the epitome of a black swan event where we don't know much about it, or at least people haven't studied it. And it doesn't bode well. It really does not, if it's not done in a controlled manner, where the government needs to take control of the conversation and not do it like COVID, where we're getting, a dozen different expert opinions and the way that's rolled out.
Yeah, I think that in terms of what you're saying, if there is not full disclosure, it leaves room for assumptions, speculation, conspiracy theories. So it's a conundrum, because perhaps you can't say everything, but that is just going to lead to more uncertainty and all sorts of misinformation and theories being put out there. So,
well, it's a no-win. Yeah, it's really a no-win situation, because you think about it, the government has two basic choices, right? They could come out and say, okay, we have information, but we swear to you, we knew nothing about this. Okay, which is not a comforting message, that this whole time they didn't know what was going on or who these visitors are. The other message is, we did know and we lied to you. Okay, right. which is not also comforting, unless you're able to pass the buck off to the people from decades ago and just saying, well, they did what they thought was best for the country. That's not us. We're going to be transparent with you. And government, trust in the government, confidence, is at an ultimate low, an all-time low in the history of our country. So that's where you start from, and trying to convince people that we're going to be transparent. So anything that would lead to that, saying we've got things to hide or whatever, is not going to go well with that message. Now, as far as how fast it comes out, that's another story. I think there's a way to do that so that people do take it chunk by chunk and start to get comfortable with the information. Yeah.
All right. So before I start going in all sorts of different directions on this with compartmentalization of information, and whether there's someone or somebody that knows everything, let me take us in a different direction. I want to ask you what you think, not necessarily what you know, but what you think. Do you think we are in possession of exotic materials, alien bodies, and all the rest of that? Is there enough that compels you to go, I think there's a there?
Yeah, I think so. And again, I can't point to, I don't have firsthand knowledge of that. People that I've talked to, the most compelling things, for example, are, there was a Colonel Mac Magruder, and I know his son. We've had him on a couple shows, and he was invited to what was called the Air War College, which was where they invited a bunch of officers, and this was the spring after Roswell, right, in 48. Went back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and was shown debris, handled debris, saw bodies, saw a live body that he says was similar, but it definitely was not human. And why someone like that on their deathbed leading up to the months before they pass away, would they tell their children, this fantastic lie? A decorated war hero, friends of Eisenhower, and it's people like that. Why would you do that as the ultimate joke before you pass away?
Right.
So to me, I think those are the most compelling things. And then you look at the more recent ones, where, people like David Grush, again, they're repeating what they've been told, but those firsthand witnesses allegedly do exist. And when the proper clearances and the proper evidence and protections are in place, I think overwhelmingly there's enough of these to say that we have had a retrieval program. So yeah, I'd give it a 95% chance, maybe.
Interesting, and I don't dispute that at all, because all the evidence to the contrary is not quite compelling to just make it go away, So want to get into your research into this now. Is there, or maybe you can't point to one, but of all the different cases and the different incidents that you've been able to visit and revisit now that you're into this, do you have a Mount Rushmore of cases that you've been involved in that are really compelling to you, that make you want to go back and do a little bit more digging? Because we know the way we're a little desensitized to things, and you probably get all sorts of videos, and we know how videos can be manipulated in this day and age. It's difficult to cut through all that baloney to get to the smaller percentage where we go, wow, I think there's something to this. But are there cases that, or incidents in your situation that you find like, this is really worth my time?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of these that you could spend a lifetime studying, right? I mean, like, we've looked at the Travis Walton case since 2011 is when I started with Travis, and we're still going back to that location occasionally. Roswell, as much as some people, love it or hate it, TV shows always say, okay, well, we've had enough Roswell, we're good. But then they always come back to it because there is something new there. And, I got information that there's possible current activity happening in that same area. Right. And whether it's related to the 47 event or not, I don't know. But these are the main thing, and everything that I do in this is try to dedicate as much as my free time as I can. But the main challenge is time. There literally is just so much to do that you have to have a team of people. And it would be great if you had funding, because we're not independently wealthy. We have families, we have day jobs. And, if I had the time to do it and the funds full time, there's a lot of cases I would get into and try to turn out, scientific papers, things of that nature, because this is something I think the government should be doing as well. But they have a very narrow scope, of what they're funded to do and their missions.
Yeah. To piggyback that, do you think there is one specific case, or maybe a region, a hot spot that people are not taking too seriously? You just mentioned Roswell, so maybe you already answered my question. Can you point to, this is a good time to say, on this channel, I just did a 2-part Extremely Strange on Roswell. So shameless plug. You want to visit that. So maybe you've answered that. Is Roswell kind of the thing where a lot of people think, case closed, that's it, that we're missing the forest for the trees, or are there others?
You mean where there's other cases that
Have been
require
written
more?
off. Have been written off that should.
Oh, gotcha.
Right.
Yeah. I think you're right. I hear that with Roswell. I hear that with Rendlesham Forest has been over and over, and that had some problems because you had at least one witness who seemed to be embellishing and making things up, and so that I think we're our own worst enemy on a lot of these cases. Because no matter how clear cut it seems, and you've got solid witnesses, always something creeps in and casts some doubt on it, or you've got infighting. Between the researchers and sometimes the witnesses, and that's really tragic. But the longer it goes on, I guess that's inevitable. There's another one that I think is there's two of them that sound so crazy. At first, you're like, is it even worth studying? That was the Pascagoula, Mississippi case.
Yep.
And Calvin Parker passed away just last year, and it was like, well, when you first hear that, it sounds like a sci-fi thriller, right? These robotic creatures, 3 of them with pinchers, and they come and grab them by the arms and take them in. And you're like, okay, well, these guys have a fantastic imagination.
Bad 50s sci-fi movie. Right.
Right. But you get into talking to him, and I talked to, Calvin, and he is one of the most down-to-earth, no pun intended, but legitimate, sincere people that I think it would be extremely hard for this person to lie. And the way that you read about, how the sheriff had set up a recording they didn't know that was in there to try and get them caught in a lie, how the Air Force interviewed them. There was something there. There's definitely something there that shouldn't be written off, no matter how strange it is. And I think the same thing when you look at like the Hopkinsville case. And that one was, way back in the rural Kentucky, and you've got this family living in a farmhouse, and they're supposedly, like attacked throughout the night by these little gremlin creatures. And it sounds so odd. And so a lot of times I just want to dismiss that stuff initially. But when you get into it, you see how many witnesses, you see the credibility of them, you have to at least say something happened here, which is not conventional. I don't know what box to put it in, but we need to look at all those things and all the hot spots, that everyone knows now, but, Skinwalker Ranch, and as far out as it sounds that creatures can come out of, like they describe portals and disappear. You have to wonder, if you think that it's not worth studying, I guess the government throws a lot of money at weird things, but a lot of that $22 million was spent on writing papers and everything that, your tax money went to fund, as they looked at areas like Skinwalker Ranch, so.
Yeah. There are things that frustrate me. I'm sure they frustrate you or anybody who really is immersed in this. And when Colonel Hall mistook what he saw in Rendlesham Forest for the White House. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, they're not aware. They never go on Liberty. They don't know a lighthouse is there. Those are the type of things. And I appreciate skeptics. I really do, of which there are legion, but sometimes they jump to wild conclusions too. To just say, okay, that's it. We figured it out. Before I get out of here and bring George back, we did have a question that somebody, one of our loyal fans wanted to ask, and that is, for someone who suddenly finds themselves interested in this subject, is there a resource that you would recommend? This could be a book, could be a paper, a website, somewhere that people who suddenly find themselves like really invested in this, what would you recommend for them to study, or as sort of like a gateway into the UFO phenomenon?
That is a great question. So remember that the first books that I ever read, they're kind of like the classics of ufology. I think the first one I read was Whitley Strieber's, Communion, which the cover of it scared the crap out of me. And I still don't know the line of reality and blurry, fiction writing with that case, but it was really introduced me to this, so-called abduction phenomena. The other one, I think people really need to read in kind of that area is Fire in the Sky. That's Travis Walton's book.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've seen the movie, what that will do is completely change your mind that it's far more believable, actually, because the movie added a lot of stuff that didn't happen. And so I think that one is very well. He does a really good job of scientifically too, walking through the physical evidence and everything that took place. As far as Roswell goes, read anything by Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt, like the Roswell Witnesses. I'm blanking on the exact name, but their original books and the follow-ups, and you see the sheer number of 200 plus witnesses,
Right.
And how all the puzzle pieces come together, because people who just hear about Roswell, oh, I heard it was a weather balloon or whatever. It's like, you cannot make those judgments without hearing the case first. And overwhelmingly in a criminal court, you could be, convicted by the evidence, I think. And then there's a number of others that I think give a good overview.
We lied twice on that. It's like, it's a weather balloon. No, it's Project Mogul.
Exactly.
So you have no one to blame but yourself. All right, I'm going to bring George in here, Ben. I'll be back to say goodbye. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of time here, and we'll be back a little later.
Yeah, thanks, Ken.
Thank you. And Ben, I appreciate your time again. I know we're limited here, so I'm going to move very, very quickly. Number one, we had Travis Walton on the show a little while back, very reserved to begin with. And I can understand why, and especially what he's had to contend with in the field. But he opened up in the second hour, and it was a lot of fun talking with him. We know the term nuclear race or arms race. We know tech race. Are we in the midst of an alien tech race right now with other countries? And the first ones that everybody comes to mind would be Russia, China, things of that sort. Does that exist right now that you're aware of or suspect to? Or is there a dark horse, perhaps South America, that has more in this game than we actually know about?
I'd have to say everything I think I know about that is pure speculation, because I haven't been convinced that other countries are, as involved. I think that the US, and it makes sense that there have been agreements, or more so like we're compelling them, if they did have a crash, that we'd be involved in the retrieval. You hear those stories, that we go in maybe even without coordination or permission. And we have teams that go in and take the material. So I think we may be one of the only countries that has the resources to back engineer that stuff. Russia, perhaps, because we know after the Cold War, and we were comparing stories, and the spies released their their records and stuff, and what we thought was them and they thought was us. Like, no, it wasn't. So I think it's possible that they too have had programs to back engineer things. But again, this is all pure speculation, and you hear that we haven't really progressed very far with it. I honestly don't know if we've been able to make any of this tech work. I think, if anything, minimally, there's some mimicry involved. Maybe like we developed the stealth bomber and some things based on handling material and seeing, hey, maybe there's stuff that could absorb radar. Maybe there's designs and wings and whatever that can help us fly better. But as far as the actual propulsion, it's so hard to say.
Yeah.
We have the TR-3B thing was actually a made up designation. It was something that someone just gave a name to, that the actual program may not exist at all. But I've talked to witnesses who have been underneath these things like 30 feet. Some of the people in the Phoenix Lights case were at least 100 feet underneath them, and they saw rivets. They saw seams and rivets that sound like, hey, this is sort of like a U.S. made conventional craft, right?
Yeah.
And then other people 30 feet under it, back in the 90s, were seeing things that look like incandescent light bulbs, and their gut instinct was, this is man-made. But it's completely silent.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just sitting over the top of them. So I can't help but wonder if we have achieved some of that and been able to a degree to back engineer and build our own tech out of it. But so the question, do others have this? If we could do it, I guess we have to assume that they may have done it too. But you think of how many bad actors there are in the world right now, and how many are crazy. And how many of them, if they could get away with dominance by using tech like this, why wouldn't have they done it by now and introduced it into war? So I think we may be the only ones that have that. And there's this restraint that we have, that we don't need to bring out these toys. Right. I mean, this is all speculation, but that's kind of where I'm thinking with it, that we wouldn't use it in war because we're already the world's superpower.
Well, always consider the fact, too, the far-reaching arm of our government, that when there are other countries that may have these encounters, communications could be intercepted, and all of a sudden we swoop in to assist, with that country. We'll take this off your hands kind of thing. So it's not necessarily a monopoly, but it certainly leans towards that opportunity that those of power maintain power.
Well, and we have that leverage. You look at how much billions and trillions of dollars we give away in foreign aid. Yeah. So they're beholden to us. A lot of them's like, hey, you want this to continue the way it is. You're gonna keep us on speed dial when these things happen, right?
Yeah, you can have a flying saucer, you can have some meals. It's up to you. That's how they work it. We, of course, know you, Ben, through fandom. So many of our viewers know you from the shows. What is happening with you right now? Before we let you go, we want to definitely give people an opportunity where they can see Ben Hansen, what's coming up for him project-wise, so that they can get their chance to be up close and say hello.
Yeah, so like I said, the TV world is very unpredictable, and I develop and try to create shows, and then sometimes others just come to me and say, hey, are you interested in this? And a lot of people asking if there's going to be another season of UFO Witness. And unfortunately, so it's never been officially canceled, but unfortunately, sometimes they just kind of linger there, and you're kind of thinking, well, I guess they're still thinking about it, maybe. But there's been big budget cuts, especially with that merger with Discovery and Time Warner. So they're very picky. Everyone wants a UFO show. That probably is not going to come back. However, we have similar shows like that. And then in the meantime, I was approached by TMZ, of all places. And there you go. They asked me if I was interested in being part of this team there, of a show called Strange and Suspicious. And
I'm suspicious that it's very similar to Fact or Faked.
Yes.
It goes around the room.
I joked about him with that. I said, not to brag, but I said I'm the grandfather here in the room of a show called Fact or Fake that, we kind of, I think, spawned that whole viral video,
right?
Situation room discussion. Yeah. The only kind of real difference here is this show, we don't go into the field, but we have a lot of opinions. You got a lot of varied experts in there, from archaeology to homicide, detectives, crime podcast show, hosts. And so we cover everything from, does the president have, a classified, let's just say like a program where they collect the president's feces when they go to the bathroom, right? To protect it because of what could be learned from that.
Or cloned.
People want to know.
So we look at that everything from that to the latest UFO sightings, cryptid, unsolved crimes. So we cover so much, and it's really fun.
Love it.
So that's on TMZ, which is on Fox. Not every major city of Fox affiliate is carrying it yet,
but many of the episodes you can find also on YouTube.
Yes. So what they did is that strangeandsuspicious.com website, they cut up all of the episodes into segments, and so you can see it on YouTube. You can see it through links on that website.
Right.
And it's a different approach. They're basically releasing all of it and just giving it away for free, to build the momentum for it to hopefully get a more than the first 20 episodes.
Incredible. I think that we ran out of time here as we expected. Ben's got other things to do. And again, it took a while to get you on here with us, but every minute of it was worthwhile. And I can't thank you enough. And, I'll start putting the petition in to have you back in about 3 years.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah.
Before we go, I wanted to show Ben something. You talked about a book you read, the first book you ever read. I'm going to show you mine. Okay. Now,
there.
5th grade book sale down in the cafeteria. I think that cost me a whopping 50 cents. And for whatever reason, I still have it. So.
I love those. And I love going into old antique stores, because a lot of these classics are overlooked and people don't even know what's there. And there's just so many. I've got a pile of about 30 books. I took a speed reading course because I want to read all this stuff, but who has time to sit and read anymore?
Oh, I know, right?
Especially when you're on the go the way that you are. Ben Hansen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we wish you the best for the upcoming months, and hope we get a chance to keep in touch. Lord knows, no matter when I message you, you always take the time to message back. I appreciate that.
Thanks, George and Ken. Really appreciate it.
All right, my friend. Take care.
You too.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and go to break right now. When we come back on the other side, our very special live guest, Katie Paige, will be joining us just on the other side. You're watching Dead or Live on the Dead or Full Spectrum channel. Stay with us.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
As UFO reports come in from around the world, the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, is there. We continue to explore new cases and build our massive database. We share our information with the world in a number of ways. If you would like to be part of our investigative team, you are always welcome. What could be more exciting than exploring the UFO question firsthand? Join MUFON, find your friends.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
want to thank again Ben Hansen for doing that pre-recorded interview. Ben, if you are watching the show at any time, I had to take the tux off. I'm in Florida, dude. It's just way too hot.
Hey, did anybody notice anything different when we came back from break? For me, I had to go change hats because I realized I was wearing the same kind of outfit that I was Wednesday when we recorded this.
Laundry week, is it?
I don't know. I just don't want anybody to think, wow, Ken hasn't changed his clothes since Wednesday. It's unsettling.
Thank you also, Ken, for doing the bulk of that interview. It's right up your alley. I can give very layman questions out there, but this is where you shine, my friend. So thank you. I'm gonna let you shine a little bit more and tell everybody some of the things that are upcoming, both on our YouTube page and also on our Patreon account, if you would, sir.
Okay, we've got Katie Paige in the green room right now. So the big announcement, there's a couple of them. They're running neck and neck. The first is the return of Live from the Haunted Museum with Cody and Scully. They're going to be returning to dead air next month. We'll be giving you the date and the time, but we're going to welcome them back because they're always a lot of fun. You guys love when they get together. They're so good together. And that'll be coming back. And also this coming Saturday for our Patreon members, we are doing a live investigation. We return to the Alley Theater. And we're going to be going live at 8 p.m. this Saturday, August 3rd, members only on Patreon. And everyone will be getting the link to join us live. The chat room will be active. You can speak to us on location, ask us questions, tell us what you may see or what you may hear. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So we've been planning that for a little bit right now. And as I said many times in the past, we were going to try to do this again with Rise Up. And as we've told you, for our Patreon members, we like to give you a little bit of stuff like that, something out of the norm. So I don't know how long we're going to go, as long as it takes, I guess. Once we're there and set up. So that's this Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern.
And if you're not a Patreon member, Nani Boo Boo.
Yeah, hurry up.
Yeah, it's the only way you can check this out, live or post even for that matter. So you guys, again, if you want to join us, it's a $3 membership on Patreon. I mean, again, it's quite affordable in today's day and age.
There's an awful lot of content on there. And also, this is not something that we're going to do our typical review on our show, where we're going to be showing all sorts of evidence and things like that. So, that's the deal.
Yeah, we might present that on Town Hall. But yeah, you guys definitely check it out. We'll be posting on social media for times of the events and things such as that. That being said, Ken, if you'd like to introduce our guest tonight.
I would love to, because we're so happy to have her join us tonight. Katie Paige, and she is the former MUFON State Director of Colorado and has personal ties to a high strangeness ranch in Colorado. In UFO folklore, it was known as the Clearview Ranch, and predates the infamous and much more well-publicized sister, the Skinwalker Ranch, by over a decade. And this is what motivated her interest in ufology, to find answers to her own personal experiences. And we were trying to get Katie on a while back. Schedules didn't match up, but we are so happy to have her join us now. Please welcome Katie Paige.
Hey, thanks, Ken. Thanks, George. Hopefully my sound is okay. I had to unplug my trusty Nano. I'm not sure what's going on, but I hope you can hear me all right.
Yeah. I'm great.
The only thing we can recommend is lower your volume about halfway, so we won't get feedback.
So we're not getting echo. That's what I was afraid of.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Keep going. Lower more.
A little bit more?
A little
Yeah,
bit.
Okay.
I think what's happening there is without earbuds or headphones, your microphone on your computer is picking up what we're saying.
Right.
So that's why we have an echo.
Do you have headphones?
I do. I could go downstairs and get them. Look what
Go
I
ahead.
have here.
Oh,
Ken.
look at that, Ken. Looks
You
familiar.
have the book.
Let me go grab my headphones. They're downstairs on my kitchen table. I will be right back.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Katie.
We'll bring her right back after that because
She's
that's
got the same book. That's awesome.
the feedback is never a good thing during an interview, and again, it's something that'll tend to happen from time to time, but it definitely won't interrupt our interview as we wait for her to come back with a set of headphones. But
That's okay.
this is all up your alley right now, and I think again, Ken, it's one of those things that I'm gonna sit here and just learn. Just for those of us that are also in the chat. Speaking of this Alley Theater coming up.
Yep.
This, I'm going to have to talk to you a little bit off air or during this week, who I am going to have as a co-host here in the studio, because obviously I won't be there.
All right.
So I'm trying to think of who might be different, exciting, and interested in doing this. I'm sure Bill's busy, as he always is, but maybe we can squeeze him in during that time frame to join us for a couple of Oh My Gods.
Get Ben Hansen back.
Yeah, that'll happen about 3 years.
Hey, speaking of threes, this would be our third visit there. And anybody who saw the last time, the live investigation, know that we encountered something kind of, I don't know how to put it. I wouldn't be as dramatic to say it was malevolent, but it wasn't nice. It wasn't friendly. So we'll see what happens this time around.
Yeah, that's the part I'm looking forward to. And I'm not too sure, but I'm pretty sure Julie volunteered this time to go all the way back in the corner. So we'll see what happens.
Somebody's going back in that corner.
Sandy remembers that one. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Katie is back with us. Let's see how our audio works now and check one. Oh, look at that. And you can hear us too?
All right. I can hear you great.
It's golden.
Okay. All right, Ken, let the grilling begin.
Oh, let the Inquisition begin.
No, thank you so much for joining us, Kate. Where are you based out of?
I'm up near, I'm behind NORAD, actually, outside of Colorado Springs, outside Woodland Park. So, yeah, I'm up in the Rocky Mountains, and I love it up here.
Wait, you're behind. So if they launch, do they give you access in? Are you able to get in there?
I'm hoping I'm in a safe zone. Either that or I'm going to go down real quick, because one or the other.
I figured you were
well protected. Yeah.
I figured you were going to say, "Yeah, I know a guy." Everybody
I do know a guy. The guy tells me I'm in the right place, so hopefully he's right.
I hear you.
Hello.
Hey, Raph. Alrighty then. So now, Katie, we got to get through this first before we start getting into other things. The Clearwater Ranch. I mean, the Clearview Ranch. Clearview. Now, obviously not what it's called now. Right. But I was doing a little background on this. The scope and the array of activity that's been reported in that particular property is akin to anything that I have heard anywhere else. So a little background on this, because I know the time you've invested in this, and obviously you've been very compelled to return there and investigate the property. How big is it actually a ranch or more of a homestead? And how big is this? What are we talking about acreage?
Right. Well, it's 60 acres. And what's interesting, these are noise canceling, so I can't hear myself talk. Oh, that's better. Okay. So 60 acres. But what's fascinating about it, so I'm going to give my age away here a little bit, but I was a young girl, pretty young girl, in the mid to late 70s. This is where Linda Moulton Howe, she was an investigative journalist at the time, out here working all these cattle mutilations. And what's been really interesting to me is how many people in this whole area of Elbert County, not just in the small town of Kiowa, but we're talking Franktown, Elizabeth, Simla. So a lot of these are cattle ranches, and so many people experience not only the mutilation phenomenon, and it's still going on to this day. That was one of the questions I always asked, like, you know, it was really prevalent from 75 to 78. We're talking almost daily, not only of cow, but horse, sheep, even articles about dog. People were afraid they were going to go to humans next, kind of thing. Colorado Bureau of Investigations was involved, and on and on. But just the whole plethora of different activities. So what Beyond Skinwalker has brought about for me, and I'm so grateful and thankful that they're giving these other locations other than Skinwalker Ranch the attention I think they deserve, because what it does is it kind of opens doors to conduct interviews and get to know people and have some credibility. You go knocking on people's doors, you know, people in these smaller towns tend to be pretty private individuals. So, you know, it's not always welcome if you're like, hey, right, exactly. But I've gotten to know a lot of these ranchers, and now they, you know, if they're having a current mutilation, they know who to report it to, and I can get out there and interview these people. So it's been really great and opening doors for me that way.
Right. And now currently, not to give away the ghost, is this under private ownership now?
It is, yeah. And the gentleman who owns it is very awesome. He works for one of the biggest landowners in the country, John Malone. And that's an interesting phenomenon in itself, because I'm curious, like we just a few weeks ago, we were four-wheeling down behind the Ponderosa Pines behind the ranch house. And what's interesting about that, even looking down on Google Earth on the ranch area, until you're back driving around in it, you don't really realize how big it is back there. And so they're four-wheeling, and this woman goes, whose land is this? And they're like, this is your land. So John Malone actually owns a lot of property in the Douglas County area in Colorado. And it's interesting to note, and I find this kind of fascinating, he's never, even though he owns hundreds of cattle, he's never personally had a mutilated cattle, where other small ranchers do. What's that about? They kind of leave him alone. I don't know why.
Really? All right. So we'll play a little game called I'll Tell You What I Know and You Tell Me Where I'm Wrong.
Oh, I love it. Okay. Well, I don't know if I could do that. But.
on this particular ranch, you have everything from, I guess we would call them Bigfoot sightings, cattle mutilation, alien craft. You have had light anomalies. But the thing that strikes me here is the reports of actual contact. And I'm going back to 1975, previous owner, where a conversation was held. Now, this is the story, that a couple of these people were out there, and it was something about a Bigfoot and a box or something like that. And I don't know if this is folklore or this is... and the other thing was that when the sheriff at the time arrived to check on this, it seemed as though they were kind of already aware of this type of thing elsewhere. You know, they weren't really stunned by it. But like I said, the array and the scope of activity here is outrageous. But you're also talking about, I guess, alien contact.
Perhaps. I don't know.
Well, again, you know, this is the story. You know how stories go. But I was absolutely fascinated with hearing all this. So I got to ask you the question: do you think all of these things are connected? Where do you fall in that Bigfoot, UFO, cryptid, poltergeist, everything coming together?
Yes, I think they're perhaps connected, and I'll get into why I think they might be connected. But for me personally, one of the big questions I've had this whole time, and where the evidence leads me, because I'm at the end of the day, I like documents and papers, and I like going out and talking with people. And from what I've dug up, I mean, going down to Dr. Leo Sprinkle's archives and getting all the original documents from the investigation back in the mid to late 70s. First of all, we didn't know it was investigated. So just to know that somebody was out there investigating, and not only Dr. Leo Sprinkle, PhD, but Peter Van Arsdale and John Durr, both PhDs, were out there along with others. So APRO was out there investigating. I mean, there's evidence and records that show that soldiers from Camp Carson were out there. That, you know, the Colorado Bureau of Investigations was aware, NORAD was aware. They even mentioned, you know, we have directives to handle Bigfoot and UFO sightings. And even looking at the providence of the land itself, and it was called the Mulligan Homestead. And there was a gentleman there by the name of Dick Mulligan, who was born and raised on this particular property. And if you type in Dick Mulligan Winter Park Ski Resort, in his later years, there's an article in there that talks about that Dick Mulligan was known to have the gift of gab and bold exaggeration. And I'm thinking, this is a gentleman who was born and raised on this property, and he's probably trying to tell people what's going on there. And they're like going, "Oh, Dick, you're just so full of it." So it's interesting that it goes back, and even interviewing people, neighbors that have been there for generations upon generations. There have been light anomalies flying on and off these properties for decades and decades and decades. So I think the activity predates the 70s. And even with the Native Americans, that, you know, it was kind of a nomadic area where we had several different tribes. Some they were aligning with each other, and some were warring with each other, from the Ute to the Cheyenne, Comanche, Navajo, Pawnee, the Kiowa. And so there's a rich history there. And so there's so many different moving pieces to investigating this. How much of it is Black Access Project? And in fact, I'm glad you mentioned boxes, Ken, because that's kind of this area where I'm really wanting to dig into right now, are these mysterious boxes. I personally had an encounter with one during the day.
Is it illuminated, Katie? Not to interrupt, but just...
Yeah, well, my sighting, my sighting of the box, and the way it's described in the APRO report, which John Schuessler, who is one of the founding fathers of MUFON, when he learned of my connection to the ranch, he quickly bestowed upon me the original briefing document from the ranch. And they describe it a little differently than how I remember it as a 10-year-old girl. But then again, I'm a 10-year-old girl, right? But for me, it was off the ground, about 3-4 feet off the ground by a tree. And it did have lighting to it. It illuminated, but there was nothing under it. So that's interesting. But it was making like, if you've ever stood under like electrical lights, like a buzz or a hum sound, and then it changed tones. And I just remember Jack. I feel comfortable now using the original people's names. In the briefing documents, they changed the names ever so slightly, because all three of the main adults in the briefing document have passed away. So Jack was dating my mother. This is how I didn't live on the ranch full time. I just, full disclosure there. My mom was dating the gentleman that owned the ranch, and they had 3 sons. The youngest sons lived with us during the week because they went to the Cherry Creek School District, which is about 50 minutes away from the ranch property. They wanted them to have the opportunities of a large, good school district compared to the small town high school with a graduating class of like 10 or something. And then the oldest son lived there full time, and the mother lived there full time, and she was dating another person who is an interesting character in all this, because in the records, he states that he came from San Francisco and was part of a special ops team in the Air Force. Now, we all know MK Ultra kind of started out there in San Francisco, right? And he mentions in the briefing document taking legal LSD. I don't know about you, but I don't remember a time in the 70s, in the mid 70s, when LSD was legal, was it?
No, but they were using it in experimentations.
Right, exactly. And
kind of, sort of make it okay.
Right. And when I after Contact in the Desert this year, I went and interviewed a wonderful widow and a daughter of a CIA gentleman who recently passed away. And he was talking about something they were doing around the same time called FM, which stands for effing magic. Okay, which is a combination of LSD, ayahuasca, and other drugs, right? And we have evidence that perhaps they were out there experimenting with these types of things out there on Rocky Mountain Ranch. Also, that, if you read the briefing docu, if anybody knows about this case, the night that it was legal from 64 until 67. Okay, that's good to know. So it was not in the 70s then, mid to late
Thank you, man.
70s. Yeah. But that scary night we had out there on the ranch where we heard that disembodied electrical sounding voice and that whole thing, I've been researching things called plasma ball technology where they like pipe sound out so it sounds like there's a human voice, and it sounds almost identical to what we heard that night on the ranch. So my question, Ken, then has always been, how much is Black Access Project and LSD and drugs and how, all that kind of stuff, and how much of it is actual, unidentified, unexplained phenomenon? And where I always come to is that it's a combination of both, because even for me being back on there filming, I've had very unusual paranormal type things happen, which can't be faked. And it's something that I can't explain or nobody else can explain. And not only that, but this is affecting hundreds of people in the area. So it's not like it's just on this one ranch property. It's this whole area of Elbert County. And so many different types of things are happening that it can't all be just Black Access Project. So it's just this convoluted mix of things that are going on out there.
Yeah, that was going to be another one of my questions, if whether or not this is contained to this area. Obviously, it's not. There was a story back in the 70s where the owner back then sort of challenged this thing to prove to some friends he wasn't crazy. And it was, if I'm telling the story correctly, all of a sudden all the lights come out and this robotic, mechanical kind of voice comes over every radio, TV.
Yeah, that's it. I was there for that one. Yeah.
As a sort of a warning that, hey, we've been all right with you guys, some paraphrasing, we've been all right, but, don't push it here a little bit. So that is enough, really.
So this is the briefing document, and my sister and I both remember that evening because it was terrifying. And it was in this briefing document that has the exact quote. That's how I know the exact quote, but both of us remember it very well. Basically, it's attention. We have allowed you to remain. We have interfered with your lives very little. Your friend, do not cause us to take action which you will regret. Your friends, meaning my mom, my sister, and I, will be instructed to remain silent concerning us. And that was my mom, my sister, and I. We were all there just hanging out. But, what they don't talk about in this thing is that, when the power went out, we're all freaking out, candles, flashlights, that disembodied. I mean, it sounded like it came out of every orifice of the house. And then we had that big bright light out of the back window. And what's fascinating, when I went back, the very first time I went back to the property was that very first episode of Beyond Skinwalker. And I really love that these guys, like, they didn't let the owners of the property and I talk. They didn't really know. There's, when they film a 44-minute episode, it takes a week. And cameras are going all the time, so you don't know what's going to make the episode or not. But, meeting his family for the first time, and I came, with all my research, and I'm like, here. And I didn't know how they would react to the history of their property, because that's their home. And I don't want them to be afraid of their home, and they've had great memories there, and that kind of thing. So it was really way more complex than what you see on that episode. But when I first pulled up, it was getting dusk, it was getting dark, and I knew the house was in the right place, and I recognized the trees and certain things, and the silo and certain things, and the cistern and whatnot. But the house looked different to me. And after talking to the owners now, they're like, well, yeah, the original house is still in there, but they added an addition to the left and to the right and to the front of the house and put different siding on. So it looks different than how I remembered it as a child. So yeah, it was just a whole process of kind of all the stuff. And then no spoilers, because we signed non-disclosures. We had season 2, episode 1, but we're doing a second episode for season 2 in which my sister returns with me. Awesome. And that was really, really cool because, number one, I kind of had to talk her into doing it for whatever reason. And this is a big question I have just in general, is why does this phenomenon affect certain people more than others? And for whatever reason, whatever this is, has attached, I guess you could say, more to me than my big sister. I have more of the, it's almost like everywhere I go, wherever I live, I have more paranormal things happen to me and on and on and on. And my sister was like, I don't want any of that. I don't want it. I don't. So she was a little hesitant. And I'm like, well, I think it's important that you face it, because she went to the high school prom. She was older. She was, 15, 16, 17 years old on the ranch property and had different experiences than I did. We had some shared experiences and some separate experiences. But when she went back, I don't know if you saw that first episode, but they did this radio with a crystal radio experiment with me. They redo that with my sister, and I can't tell you what happens, but it's pretty fascinating. And she was remembering things. And one of those things actually is a box encounter. And they haven't even touched on the whole box phenomenon on Beyond Skinwalker, but we have filmed it. And I hope they use it if they're lucky enough to do another season 3. I hope they bring the boxes in, because I think that's an important aspect to all this. What are these mysterious boxes? And like you mentioned, Ken, it's like the police officer has seen it. Multiple adults witness these things, and other cases around the country experience these boxes.
It is bizarre.
That is really bizarre.
One of the elements of this are the boxes. So anybody who's going to watch this, it'll all make sense to you.
Yeah, right.
There's another phenomena there I wanted to ask you about. This idea of the hum, this droning. And it sounded to me, as they described it, like infrasound, because it would disturb sleep. It would kind of, I don't know if it would kind of put people in a mood, but it was sort of like mind altering, not hallucinating, but just this irritability. And you hear that from infrasound. And I'm wondering if you've looked into things like, I guess the most famous is the Taos hum in New Mexico, and what this phenomena is, and if it correlates to other places. I don't know what's going on in Taos, to be honest with you, but if it correlates to other places that have this same type of phenomenon going on.
Yeah, I have 2 thoughts about the hum. And how fascinating is it that they caught the hum while they're filming? And I'm like, no, but like legitimately, you can sometimes hear the hum, right? A couple thoughts I have on this. I know, experimenting with and researching sound weapons is nothing new. It started after World War II, right? So that's one thought. Were they experimenting with sound? And like you said, I actually had a woman out in Nevada that came up to me after a conference and said, have you thought about maybe these boxes? Because they are said, and I heard what sounded like a bee sound, and then it would change tones. Do they have anything to do with the craft that are seen there, or the extraterrestrials, these AI type looking tubey guys, I call them, thanks to Paul Giamatti, he labeled them tubey guys, so now I call them tubey guys. Or do they have something to do with the cattle mutilations? I've talked to ranchers who say it's really strange. On the pastures where the mutilations are occurring, the cattle seem to be calm and kind of huddled together. Are there a frequency being toned that does this to them, that calms them down? And the adjoining pastures, the cattle seem to be freaked out and crazy. So do the boxes have something to do with sound? But something else that I just recently looked at right in this area, and the way this came about is I did an interview with a very credible guy who's an elk hunter, firefighter, family guy, super credible guy. He's out elk hunting in the area, and it's dust time. He's walking back to his truck, and not too far in the distance, he sees, basically he described it as 2 bundt cake pans, one on top of the other. The top is spinning counterclockwise, the bottom is spinning clockwise, and he sees it for about 10 seconds, turns around, it's emitting an orange glow, and the thing just vanishes. No sound, no anything. This is just a couple of years ago. So we went to the location of this area, and this is a location too where they find mysterious dead elk as well. And he's like, I'm a big tough guy. I don't get scared very easily, but there's areas out there in Elbert County where I just don't go into even in the daytime. And this particular area is one of those areas. And I joke in the, when I'm interviewing him that it's like Fangorn Forest from, Lord of the Rings, because it gets really thick and deep. So the three of us walk back to where he spotted this thing, and it's really interesting because you have this brush, and then you go right to this place where this thing was hovering there, and it's kind of this big open circle area right before the forest gets really thick back there, and there's an elk path that runs right through it. And I think there's an elk connection. And I know David Pilates talks about this also in his Missing 411 UFO Connections film, where, we have Carl Higdon out there of Rawlins, Wyoming, and he had a box associated with his sighting as well. And other interesting cases that involve elk. So is that part of it? When it comes to the hum, though, when we're out there, he's talking about the Palmer Divide. And in the right where the ranch and all this phenomena is in the Palmer Divide. And it gives really interesting weather patterns. And I'm wondering when the wind comes over, because in the report, it actually talks about when the wind when it's more windy, the hum sound picks up. So is it a strange weather phenomenon throughout the Palmer Divide that's causing a hum in different areas? So I don't know, but it's also reported that when you hear the hum, just like that scary night with the disembodied voice, we heard the hum, things happen. So again,
it's plausible. It's plausible. It could be weather related, but
right.
It sounds like we're not there yet, because I know people have described it as it sounds like it's coming from underground, but acoustically, you can be fooled on that kind of thing when, it's environmental. So, and this is what I mean about this particular location. I mean, you've been to Skinwalker, you've been a part of that, but in reading up about this, I was like, my goodness,
right.
I know. It's definitely more publicized, but I'm glad that there is still access to this place where you can further your research into this.
Yeah, and not only there, but like I said, I'm getting to know other people. So we're going to other locations, and even, talking to old timers. I just interviewed a gentleman who's in his 90s, and on the 4th of July, so he has cattle up here in Woodland Park also. And he said, for 3 4th of Julys in a row, he had a mutilation. So guess what we did 4th of July? We're scouting out the skies, and, super open. His name's Carl. I won't give his last name, but a super nice gentleman. He's very conservative, and he doesn't really want to go to ETs, extraterrestrials, and UFOs, because I don't know if he necessarily believes in that. But his theories of, these are just, because we also have the mysterious helicopter phenomenon that has been going on, in newspaper articles about these menacing choppers and these mysterious, encounters with choppers. And I'm talking hundreds of them. A lot of them are seen. And are they connected to things? But his theory was, they're just back from Vietnam War and they're bored, so they're flying these choppers. Well, I don't think so. And some of my research doesn't match that at all. But he just didn't want to make that leap to, UFOs and extraterrestrials doing this. I mean, there's just, when it comes to the mutilation, and I stayed away from mutilations for a long time because that's not my area of expertise. I leave that to, Chuck Zukowski got into that, and Christopher O'Brien and Linda Howe. I'm like, you guys take that because it's so complex.
Linda Howe, that's your thing.
Yeah.
Katie, if you don't strike me as the type of person, if given the choice on 4th of July to do this and go to the Dairy Queen and watch fireworks, that you'd be eating ice cream that night. This seems to be right up your alley. But what I wanted to ask you, separate from this, is, and I wanted to ask this of a ufologist for a long time. Do you think it's a blessing or a curse that civilians and civilian groups have kind of taken the lead in UFO research in terms of finding out what's going on?
Definitely a blessing. a little of a curse, and here's why. And I just talked to somebody earlier today about this very thing. Like I like historical research and historical data, and I still think there's a lot to be learned and gleaned from historical cases. The problem becomes, and I headed up the Mars program for MUFON, which is all their on paper records from 1969 till the time we did the CMS and went digital. So you're reading, and even Dr. Leo Sprinkles, which I spent 3.5 years digging through over 70 boxes of letters. You read about and look at interesting cases, but don't know the provenance of how it was researched, who the researcher was, did they do their due diligence, that kind of thing. So I think it would be really cool, and I know MUFON as an organization has tried to standardize how we go about researching a case. But so that's where it gets a little, the civilians doing the research, you need standards on how that's being done, I think is important. But on the other hand, where I think it's a blessing is, trusting our government and trusting this whole process is at an all-time low. They don't control the narrative. And quite frankly, I don't trust what they're telling us because everything's so compartmentalized. And we had, I just by happenstance ran into a higher up at General Electric who said, oh boy, let me tell you, we had a long conversation, and they put, back engineering metamaterials, if we have them and so forth, into these, Lockheed, Skunk Works, and Northern Grumman, and General Electric. So we can't do FOIA requests, right? And they compartmentalize these things where one person doesn't know what that person's doing. And so when these people say they don't know, they probably really don't know,
Yeah, so I'll go somewhere with you before I bring George in, because I'm just curious about this, because I know it's been a minute since all of this happened. So let's go back to the congressional hearings really quickly. Move the needle for you in any way, or do you feel at the end of it we're still pushing the rock uphill?
Definitely pushing the rock uphill, but still good. Still making little progress. Do I trust it? Do I not trust it? I think really it comes down, at least for me, because I'm going to just disclose my biases right now. And I am biased when it comes to the research I've done on the ranch. Because if we have Black Access projects out there, we have MK Ultra, we have Camp Carson, we have the Air Force, they're hiding things. And if they did, even, there's reports, this old book here is a good one. I think they actually reference this book in your favorite book that gave you your beginnings, is Something Out Here, this flying saucers in the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah.
There's liability issues here if they disclose all the truths, all the lies. And listening to Ben Hansen, they would have to be really careful on how they would disclose this. They can say, well, this was 40 years ago. They made a mistake. We want to be transparent now. But you still have living descendants and relatives, and even folks like myself. Like if I found out they were out there and they, this big circle on the ground that nothing grew on, or this disembodied voice that could be plasma ball technology. This has affected my whole entire life, my mother's life, my sister's life, other families' lives. That's a problem, in my opinion, because, I don't know, maybe I'd have a boring life otherwise, but, this is kind of interesting what we do, but there's still liability there.
You know something, Katie? I have to admit, I never thought about it in those terms. But now that's just kind of like, yeah, I see that with experiencers who right now are going through, a lot of them go through a process. And whether it's regression hypnosis, whether it's any one of a number of things, which regression hypnosis, I'm kind of like this about it.
Right.
It all depends who's doing it, you placed memories and things like that. It's like what happened to you last night, as opposed to tell me about the UFO last night. So you're already putting that.
Yeah, I agree. No, that's really a good point. And I feel the same way. But even with Beyond Skinwalker, because, we had David Morehouse out there who did the biggest remote view in the history of the country right there at Rocky Mountain Ranch. And the amount of data that they collected from these remote viewers, over 70 remote viewers from several different countries, that the program was overwhelmed. So they only did this like special little clip that if you go to historychannel.com, you could find the little clip. I'm happy that they brought them back for season 2 and kind of touched on it. But the briefing we had when we were filming was over 2 hours of watching this stuff come in. And they even, in that briefing document they had where the adults in the situation said, let me show you about these boxes and that they're lethal. And we're going to have a Sasquatch walk up to this box, and the Sasquatch drops to its knees. And it was basically a warning, like, don't mess with us. These boxes are lethal, and I'm going to prove it to you. And in the remote view at David Morehouse, they were remote viewers doing boxes and creatures down on the ground. And I'm like, are they faking this? Are they all these things that happen? I mean, that I would drive back to the hotel in my Jeep going, again, if I ever found out, and I don't think they're faking it in any ways. And I try not to read comments and messages, online and on social media and stuff, because there's a lot of, haters out there that, oh, that's bull crap or whatever. But I'm there living it. And I can tell you that if I find out they're faking it, I'll be madder than anybody else for the same reason as if the government did it. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's so personal to me and my family and all these other people that experience it.
My concern on this is whether or not it's part of a program of desensitization to us, because, aliens. Okay, and because that seems to be like kind of where we are at this point. And I made the point to Ben, we didn't handle a pandemic very well as far as globally coming together in a crisis. So it remains to be seen what disclosure would actually do. I'm going to bring George back in. Katie, it is delightful to talk to you. You are awesome. And we'll be back to say goodbye in a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
All right, Katie, we do have some questions from the chat also. Wanted to cover these for you. From Jeff Hilton, I have noticed that there is about a 15-year-long space between UAP sightings and the official reveal of new military equipment that looks very similar to the UAP sightings. Am I right about this?
Well, I've heard different varying years on how far advanced we actually are compared to what the general population knows. I've heard anywhere from 30 years to 40 years technology. I'm talking about cycles too of phenomena. I think it was James Keenan who kind of talked about, because a lot of these areas of high strangeness, they do have some things in common. They're usually very highly magnetic areas that ping the charts. If you look at the magnetic anomaly map of the United States, they have similar geological components, and a lot of them have water features or aquifers underground. But they also kind of go in these cycles, these seven-year cycles. And we're wondering if that has to do with, the phases of the moon or solar flares or what. So I think these are all like scientific things that could be looked at more closely and charted through the years, but that's a long-term study. But yeah, as far as technologies and that, I think that's about right. Maybe even a little bit more.
Next question from Android Paranormal, aka Matthew. Question: these 2B guys seem to have a very close resemblance to the Flatwoods monster. How are they similar or different?
Yeah, these 2B guys are very unusual. And one of my just, compelling, because I kind of go back and forth again, these silly headphones. I kind of go back and forth again on how much of this is our own technologies and projects and how much of it is actual paranormal things. But one of the coolest experiences I had at the time, I was actually the guest speaker coordinator for Colorado MUFON. I invited a gentleman by the name of Sean Bartok, who wrote a book called Flashbacks. I'm sitting in the third row watching his presentation. In the book, he claims that his property or his ranch that he had was in Castlewood, Castle Rock, Colorado, which is not very far from Elbert County and the ranch of my childhood. But in fact, his actual property and getting to know him and having dinner and lunch with him later is 14 miles away. So here we are, 14 miles away from each other. Very similar reports, the hums, the circles, the boxes, the ETs, these tubey guys. And I'm sitting there watching drawings from his book of, the same wrinkles, the same thing, the same eyes, the same tubes. In his drawings, the tubes were in the neck, but then they came out. And it's my kind of feeling, and I don't know if these tubey guys are connected with these mysterious boxes or not, but to me, they seem almost robotic or AI-like. And the other type that was spotted on the ranch were these Nordic types, these blonde, blue-eyed, typical Nordic types. So I don't know. It's very, very, very unusual what these guys are, but I kind of feel like they could be almost robotic or AI. And maybe that's what in the APRO reports, the what's reported in there is that they were in conflict with one another. Like, we're having this conflict, you guys just don't mind us and what we're doing, and maybe perhaps that's what the conflict is over, where we're headed as a species.
Exactly. One more from Matthew here also is, did Katie or anyone else hear what is described as trumpets on the ranch? These trumpets or metal sounds seem to be a worldwide phenomena too.
Not so much trumpets, but there were reports of bangs and sounds coming from underground. And I know they looked into different, cisterns and things that could be under the ground. And a question I had then is there any tunneling under the ground? Because we're looking, and in the 70s, actually, the Air Force Academy owned more property across I-25 around the Black Forest area, which also the Black Forest area of Colorado has a history of sightings as well. Strange sounds and bangs underground. Were they tunneling from, let's say, NORAD to who knows where, maybe up even through Montana? Goodness knows we probably have tunnels all across our country that most of us are unaware of.
Yeah, I can honestly say, and the reason why I had Ken really delve into this interview more so is his knowledge behind it. My background is more so ghost hunting, paranormal investigating. And what I applaud you for is similar to what, Ken and his team does with Pain House. They would go in constantly in the same location, develop a rapport, understand the mannerisms and mechanisms of the activity that goes on there. You're kind of doing that in the location that you're at too. You're landlocked, so I'm not sure whether or not you delve too much in the unidentified submerged phenomena that's going on out there, whether it be lakes or whether it be the oceans. But in that aspect, does it pique the interest to go outside of your comfort zone and look at the things that you could explore there as well, or is just too much where you're at right now to focus on?
Well, there's just so many different components to this area in general, but I do think it's important to go and talk with, I do think there's a water component to it. Now, you're right, I am landlocked. We don't have a lot of water in our area, just reservoirs and whatnot. But it is interesting to note that right there on that 60-acre property, we have two aquifers, the Dawson and the Denver, that come right together right there on the property. Is that part of the phenomenon? I don't know. Does it have anything to do with one of the coolest things that happened to me in season 1? It was that very first night back on the ranch property. They want me to walk them back towards the tree line where I encountered this box, right? And it's unexpected blizzard, snowstorm, going over the barbed wire. I actually was soaking wet. It was freezing. You can see on there how cold everybody is. But I was like the lead. All the cameras were kind of like back behind me. And out of nowhere come these bipedal tracks. And they were pretty far apart. They were one in front of the other. I would guess maybe a 6-foot stride. And then they just disappeared for maybe 10, 12 feet. Reappeared and then disappeared as if something came up from underground. So is there a void under the ground at the ranch? I don't know, but it was weird. It was really, really strange.
It sounds like it for sure. I want to squeeze in one more question here from our chat. Jeff Hilton wants to know, have you ever researched a case and had a reliable source to suddenly say that they are done with it and can't talk about it anymore?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, well, for a couple different reasons. Of course, even my witness that, was out elk hunting, he's a business owner. He has a job. He's like, I don't, want to ruin my credibility. And in fact, that's why this area was known even back in the day as Clearview, because they didn't want the town to be inundated or lose credibility or people thinking they're nuts. So, and not only that, but there's the fear factor, or we're dealing with the unknown. People don't want to invite this stuff in. We don't know what we're dealing with. In this particular area, I know there's those out there like Dr. Stephen Greer who thinks they're all love and light. It's been my research has shown a combination of the two. It's not all love and light, and it can be quite frightening at times. So yeah, for those reasons, people can be, let's start this process, and then I've had enough. I don't want to invite it in.
Not the first or last time we'll hear that story in any part of the paranormal field.
Right.
Believe it or not, we are absolutely completely out of time, Katie. And I can tell you this, it's there's a lot to cover. Would you come back sometime?
I would love to. Absolutely.
I'd love to have you back again.
I want to talk about the Black Forest with you sometimes.
All right.
Do that. No, we do appreciate it. Anybody that would like to follow up with Katie's work, of course, you got katiepage.net. You have any upcoming appearances that people should know about should they want to travel?
There is a conference, and gosh darn it, it's outside. It's in Albuquerque, but I will post it on katiepage.net. I'll get it up there in my upcoming appearances box here soon, so you can find out about that conference outside of Albuquerque. It should be a good one. I will be there. And I also started my new foundation, Rocky Mountain Ranch Research. So you can go to RockyMountainRanchResearch.org, and I'm having a blast doing the logo and coffee mugs and t-shirts and all that kind of fun stuff to support, because one thing I'm really trying to do right now is, they're really good at Beyond Skinwalker going out there and flying drones, and they're having these different anomalies. I'm trying to acquire all the equipment to go out there and repeat what they're doing on my own. And we were just out there a couple weeks ago and flew a drone, and it had 100% battery charge. We shot it up, and within 2 minutes it was completely down and drained. So I was like, oh, okay. So I like that repeatable kind of science. And since I'm naturally an untrusting person, I want to go repeat things myself. So, so that's kind of what I'm up to now. Yeah, doing interviews and
I'll tell you what, Katie, I can see us having you back real soon, or until the restraining order comes.
Yeah.
because from a selfish point of view, there's so much that I love to talk with you about, and so we're going to do that. And
okay, that sounds great.
Come on back.
And it is an education too. So, Katie, don't hang up. Stay with us for just a second, but we got to close out the show. Thank you guys all for joining us. For our Patreon members, we'll see you tomorrow night at Town Hall. And again, coming up very, very soon, Cody and Satori's Haunted Museum going to be returning to us. Right now, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good night. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Night all.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad. After her there ain't no coming back. Wanna take a run at that. I think she's feeling me, turn it up a few degrees. My imagination of her body gets the best of me. Oh gosh, she's such